With the Fantastic Four set for its July 25th release date by the Disney company and Marvel Studios, already we know that there's a lot of things going against it. The biggest one of all is Pedro Pascal's politics and exactly how he's been going off the rails, not just after the whole backlash going on with The Last of Us Season 2 and how he's been heavily defending that series and that season in particular and really going off the rails there, but also how he's actually been doing the same exact thing with the Fantastic Four, female Silver Surfer known as Shalla Bal, who, by the way, is not necessarily a gender swap. Let's be very clear about this, but she is the love interest of Norrin Radd, but she's going to be the primary focus above Norrin Radd, above him all else in Fantastic Four, that's for sure. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. Now, one thing about Pedro Pascal is that there's a lot of Pedro fatigue going on right now because he's cast in nearly everything. You know, almost everywhere you look at this point, Pedro is in it, whether it's action movies, comedy films, superhero movies, Star Wars films, or shows, whatever it may be. He's everywhere, and people are just getting a lot of Pedro Pascal fatigue. But that's not the only thing. We know that a lot of people are very deeply upset and annoyed over the fact that Disney chose Shalla Bal, a character that was in a handful of pages in a comic years ago, above Norrin Radd to be the focus in Fantastic Four First Steps. Now, what's interesting here is that we already know that there's a lot of things going on right now with Pedro Pascal. He's been going off the rails lately, even more than normal, and I think a lot of this bitterness has a lot to do with the fact that The Last of Us Season 2 did not go the way that he believed it would because of how it embraced the entire typical messaging and agenda that backfired. However, with the Walt Disney Company still struggling with course-correcting the Marvel Universe, especially with their Ironheart series on the horizon for June 24th, one major development going on now involves more to do with Fantastic Four and Pedro Pascal, snapping at fans in the midst of the backlash over Shalla Bal, carrying the spotlight over Norrin Radd in Fantastic Four. Now, Pascal recently delivered the following in a desperate move to convince everyone to embrace Shalla Bal. Getting to work with Julia Garner was a blast, man. I mean, it was a total blast, and this is the Silver Surfer that we deserve. Shalla never got the limelight that she deserved, and the recognition that she deserved in the comics, and she is finally getting that recognition that she actually needs in this film. And to the fans that really aren't fans, to the people that are posers, essentially, and having a problem with Shalla Bal, is the main focus over the traditional Silver Surfer. I think this is the living example of everything wrong with fandom culture right now. And we need to seriously improve that. I have noticed one thing is that toxicity lives on in both fandoms for Star Wars and Marvel, both of which I have had the pleasure of becoming a part of. But dealing with toxic fandom culture is the ultimate price that you pay as an actor for taking part in these roles. And I don't think I have ever seen it worse than this by picking on a female character that was heavily beloved in the comics. To me, it's hilarious the way people act and how they will do everything that they can to show their true colors. There is an outright obvious issue with misogyny that is running wild in our country, and to be honest, it scares me as a human being and as an actor, and what other performers are going to have to put up with in other fandoms. We don't need to hear the illogical argument that Shalla was only in a certain amount of pages in the comics from years and years ago. That's an invalid argument and debate. We need to really take a step back and realize that for this industry to survive, we must embrace female empowerment and diversity, and all the important things in this industry that are obviously being attacked by you-know-who. I don't even want to mention his name anymore. Guys, let me just stop right there. The fact that Pedro Pascal's at a point where he can't even drop Donald Trump's name, it goes to show you how truly Pedro Pascal is split in half over the fact that DEI has been abolished by Donald Trump and the entire presidency, the entire administration, and how that was stripped away from multiple organizations, Hollywood studios, the workplace, everywhere. And yes, you are going to have a resistance going against that, and it still is happening to this day. Hence the HBO Harry Potter series for 2027, roughly, and how they race-swapped Snape. That's another living example there as well. But the fact that you had Pedro Pascal here really openly admitting that he has a very big problem with fandom culture and how he calls it toxic. Look, I don't think it's toxic at all per se. I think that people are just very, very passionate over the Fantastic Four as a film, and they want a comic-accurate version of that actually resonates with themselves, right? Of what they grew up with, the comics that they enjoyed throughout decades and decades ago. Not a character like Shalla Bal that was used on a minimal scale compared to Norrin Radd. Now look, we talked about this through the various leaks months ago, that Norrin Radd may very well appear in this, but it's going to be very short-lived. It's not going to be anything substantial. It's not going to be like he's going to be a main character in this film, but Shalla Bal is going to be the main iteration of Silver Surfer in the Fantastic Four First Steps. That's a given. That's the actual fact right now. Interestingly enough, yes, reshoots are still going on as we speak, and there's a lot of things going on there that we will have a lot of time to discuss about. However, he goes on to continue, but right now, this is our chance to shine a light on a character that deserves the screen time in a film like this. And shame on the fans. Shame on them for being opposed to something like that. Toxic fandom culture is something that I think needs to be looked at very carefully. I have seen it with Star Wars, Marvel, and even video games like The Last of Us, and what we decided to do over at HBO with Season 2. And it's repulsive behavior, to me especially as a male feminist and activist that aims to call out the nonsense in this world. Everyone needs to see the truth. As for Julia Garner, she's going to knock it out of the park, I tell you, and my one piece of advice that I gave to her was just don't listen to the loud toxic fans. They don't matter, they just don't. Listen to the ones rooting for you and clapping at your performance, and that's all that matters. So look, this is the same Pedro Pascal guys that rooted for race-swapping Snape in the Harry Potter series and getting so angry and bitter toward Harry Potter fans for calling out the nonsense that HBO did by race-swapping that character and doing what they did to the character. And again, that's a deal breaker for a lot of Harry Potter fans, and the fact that Pedro Pascal is getting mixed up in that drama goes to show you that, well, he really just can't mind his own business. And look, that's the one thing that's going against Fantastic Four right now, is not just Pedro Pascal fatigue, but Pedro Pascal's behavior and how he actually gets way too involved in politics, and he never seems to stop, and he doesn't want to stop at all, Also, his obsession with LGBTQ rights and mixing that up in, actual movies, whether it's Star Wars or Marvel, whatever it may be. Nobody wants to hear about all that agenda-driven nonsense and garbage out there. That's just a fact. People don't want to hear it anymore. It's 2025 now. DEI is being abolished. People just want a good story, period, the end. And look, I pointed this out before. The Fantastic Four trailers, they are no Snow White. Alright, it's been proven that this movie is no Snow White. It's not universally rejected, or it doesn't have like universal record-breaking backlash or anything like that, but for a Fantastic Four movie, it doesn't seem like it's doing the way it should when it comes to the excitement level. It really needs to be the greatest thing out there to be a great Fantastic Four movie. We'll have to wait and see. Overall, I think that everything else aside here, Pedro, female Silver Surfer, Shalla Bal over Norrin Radd, that's working against it as we speak. But overall, I would like to hear what you all have to say about this below in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. And I will catch you guys later.